guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Pink Fresh Studios. I'm using the You're Wonderful in Every Way as well as the Spiral Circle die. And so I had made these cards actually quite some time ago, a few months. I was just waiting for that Spiral Circle to come back in stock because you can see it here. It's beautiful. And it's such a nice background element. It's just something a little different. Definitely reminds me of those, what were they called? Biography things that we used to play with as kids. And so we're going to do kind of the background elements first, and then we'll do our stamping and our Copic coloring. No big shock here. We're going to have a lot of blue. I knew that I wanted my flowers to be pinks and oranges. And to me, there's going to be green in the leaves. So the next logical color would obviously be blue. I mean, can you even blame me? And so what I did here is I just kind of outlined the die so that I could know where to put my shading. And I did speed this up because there is quite a bit of ink blending. You don't have to do the ink blending, but I just really feel like it adds another element, another interesting element. And so I'm working kind of from the inside out, darkest to lightest, but you could do whatever combination of this you would like to do. There isn't a right or a wrong way. So the game plan when I was sitting down to do this is, you guys know I'm a big fan of stretching your supplies, and I do try to do these videos pretty often where we only use one or two elements and we create multiple cards with them. And so I am using the stamps of You're Wonderful in Every Way, their coordinating dies, and then this die. And that's all the products that I'm using for all three cards. Just to give you some ideas of different ways that you can use things like this, and maybe you'll see this and you'll fall in love with it and you'll want to buy it. But maybe you have something similar that you can use to make something, to kind of just stretch your supplies. I think it's super important to get your money's worth. We all work hard for our dollars. So there I was just double checking that all my coloring was where I needed it to be, and now I'm moving on to an ink blended background. The really cool thing about the Spiral Circle die is it comes with 3 dies. So it comes with a outside outline, it comes with the actual spiral circle, and then it comes with the inside die. So you can actually cut it multiple ways. One of the ways that I used it was not using either of the outlines and just cutting it out of my background, which I think is a super cool look. And then I used all 3 dies the other 2 times for one of the circles, and I'll point it out when we get there. I could definitely have left out the inside. I just didn't think of it at the time, just to be transparent. So I like to do my ink blending lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. I feel like this gives me the best blend. And so that's what you see me doing here in super high speed motion. I don't ink blend this fast. I have sped it up considerably, just so we're not here all day. And you could do this as a full background if you like. I did not. I did it as a partial, so that the lightest blue color kind of faded off into white. And again, this is just a different look, one that I particularly enjoy. But that if that's not your vibe, don't worry about it. I also like the sparkles. Not everybody does. That's cool. I am going to spatter on, because I am using Distress ink and it's reactive with water. I'm going to do just some clean water spatters, and then I'm going to go in with some Perfect Pearls and spatter that as well. I did a couple of little groupings. Ultimately, at the end of the card, you can't see any of those little groupings that I painted on, so skip that step. Here I'm showing you, I just chose regular colored cardstock, a black, a navy, and then this lighter blue. I did not have a cardstock, and you know what? Let me know if you know of a really good, like, true royal blue cardstock, because I don't have one. And so here I'm just taking the lightest color and I'm going right over top of it with this blueprint sketch to get the shade of blue that I need. And then we're going to move on to the die cutting. So here is the inside portion, the outside outline, and then I'm going to put the inside outline, and you can die cut them all together. That's what I did. And in order to hold this down, I just used a piece of masking tape that I had. It's a hill, can you tell? That I had left over from another card. And so I secured that all down. I did the rest of the die cutting for the all the cardstock panels. And now here's the one we're going to do the die cutting with just the inside edge. Mine's kind of hanging off the edge, which is totally fine. You don't have to do that if you're not into it. But then I'm going to remove my masking tape and you'll see that it just cuts this design. It doesn't cut it out completely where it's removable, but it cuts that design into the background. I think that this is a great design for summer. So here it is on white. I didn't love that as much. So I did put it on navy and that was the winner for me. I really liked that dark blue kind of peeking through. So here I'm just kind of starting to put everything together so that this portion of it is done. I'm using Tombow Mono multi-glue. You can use whatever, I would recommend a more detailed glue that has like kind of a precision tip. That's why I'm using the Tombow Mono multi-glue, but I have a bunch of other ones I like. I like Honeybees, I like Hero Arts, I like Gina K's. Like there's a ton out there that are really great liquid glues that would have kind of a smaller nib on them. And then, I mean, I know there's plenty of other people who even go further and put them into like a micro needle kind of situation. I didn't need to do all that. Here, this is the piece that I could have left the background in. Originally, I thought that I would just use it as a placeholder. My intention here is to add glue to all of the pieces and then stack them offset so that we kind of have a shadow situation going on, but it's all like kind of the shades of blue. So my bottom piece is black, but I didn't want to lose the shape of it. So that is why I adhered that to what I thought was temporarily. I ended up keeping it. For this one, this is the one where we did the ink blended circle. I cut out a bunch of the spiral circles and I'm stacking them on top of each other. This type of die is impossible. And I don't use that word lightly because, I think everything is fixable and we must be adaptable. This type of die is impossible to use with foam adhesive. Okay, it cannot be done. It can't be done, y'all. So in order to get any sort of dimension, you do need to cut multiples and stack them on top of each other. So I stacked up 3 plain white, and then once those were adhered, the top piece will be the one that we did the ink blending with. And again, this is just to create some dimension. They were super easy to line up. I found that lining up the center edge was easiest for me to then get the thinner, more wiggly parts where they needed to go. So I started in the center, and you'll see, especially for the one that we're going to start now, where they're all kind of offset, I definitely started with the center on each one of them. This does take a long time to get glue on everything, so you're going to notice that I'm kind of going to cut until we get to the, end of all the gluing. And then when I go to put it down, I'm getting everything kind of lined up over top of it, and then I am just scooching it a little to the left so that each one of these colors will show through. So it's like creating a ton of dimension, because it's cardstock on, it's 4 layers of cardstock. But because they're adhered just slightly off center, it also creates a little bit of an illusion of movement, because you do get that shadow. So it bumps up the dimension even further. Now, because we're doing them all offset, they're definitely not going to be lined up perfectly, but I don't think that it's noticeable because the intention is to create kind of that shadow or layered effect. And then I put the lightest color on top. If you don't have colored cardstock, I mean, for years, for a long time, I never purchased colored cardstock. You could definitely just use your inks to ink blend, different layers of this. I would recommend doing your ink blending before you do your die cutting, just because it is more of a delicate die. Alternatively, you could do your ink blending afterward if you taped it into its negative. So like kept the die cut piece and taped it into its negative. Just to recap, this is where we're at. These are the 3 layouts that we're working with. They're all a little bit different. All of the renditions of the dies are a little bit different. And now we're going to move on to the coloring. So this is the large image in the is it You're So Wonderful? I said it already and I can't remember. And we're going to be stamping this in Pinkfresh Studios Hybrid ink, and this is safe for alcohol markers. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp 3 of these out. I'm only going to show you the first one because a stamp's a stamp's a stamp, folks. I didn't do anything special. I inked it up in black ink and I stamped it down, and then I moved on. Then I moved on to the coloring. If you do have to stamp more than once, you may want to go ahead and heat set it, just because it does take a while really for any ink to dry. So if you get any sort of smearing or anything like that, try heat setting it beforehand. I told you I did this card a while ago. So this is still while I was doing my more traditional way of coloring, which is lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. And that's how I've colored for years. That's what you've seen me say on my channel. If you're an OG follower, if you're original to my channel, then you know that that's typically how I colored for a long, long time. And as I have branched out and tried different markers, different alcohol markers that were not Copic markers, I have gained a lot of confidence in my coloring, and so I no longer necessarily feel the need to do this on every image. Do I still do it on some? Absolutely. Especially an image that's a little bit more complicated that I'm not familiar with, and this is a great example of that. I am fairly sure, I may be speaking out of turn, but I am almost positive, because I'm pretty good at recognizing her style, that this set was illustrated by my friend Emily Midget, and she has a very roughly illustration style, and so it makes the images beautiful. I mean, look at this flower. Stop it. It's gorgeous. Which is why that's why I selected it. But because of that, there are kind of a lot of folds, which can be very overwhelming if you're not comfortable with your coloring. If you're not, it's totally okay. Just start with your lightest color when you're going in and putting in your shadows, because the lightest color is the easiest to cover up. Like if you make a mistake, if you put down your shadows and you're like, ooh, that doesn't look right, you've only put down the lightest color. And so everything else that comes after it will 100% cover it, and you don't have to worry about it, and you can adjust on the fly. So I'm just going to work out to my darkest color and then work from my darkest back into my lightest. Then we'll do the center and the leaves, and then we'll be switching colors. So how's life? How's life treating you lately? You doing okay? I feel like it's been, it's just been a little bit crazy. So for those of you, I just want to briefly touch on this. I feel like my children are always story time. My children are not going to be story time today. But I did want to briefly touch on this because several of you, which I genuinely appreciate, a lot of you sent me messages like, I don't want to overstep. Maybe you should try this with Jelly Bean. Maybe you should try that. You're not overstepping at all. Like, if I could find a way to prevent her from getting sick, like if that included me climbing a mountain to get a rare flower to bring it back down to feed it to, like the story of Rapunzel, if I could do that and then my child would never be sick, I would do it. And I don't like heights or mountains or exercise of any kind, really, but I would do it. For those of you who had asked if she is lactose intolerant, she is not. She drinks milk all the time, has no issues. It does not make her vomit. It does not make her like bowel movements weird or anything like that. That ain't it. For those of you who asked if maybe she has a soy allergy, that's not it either. I was allergic to milk when I was a baby, as was Peanut, as was my father and my sister. So when I had Jelly Bean, I put her on soy formula immediately just in case she did have a milk allergy, and that is not it. So it's not soy, it's not lactose intolerance. I wish there was an answer. I don't think there's anything, truly, I don't. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. I think that she's a daycare kid and she gets exposed to a lot of germs and they're right in each other's faces and they're snotty and they're gross and they're, sharing germs and things and they're touching each other with their hands that they have in their mouths and all of that. And I think she's just is more prone to pick up things. I also think that she has maybe a more sensitive gag reflex. Like I told you guys before, my husband can't do the throwing up. He can barely do the dirty diapers, to be quite honest, just because he has he gags himself every single day when he's brushing his teeth, which is really gross to hear. I'm going to be honest, but I love him nonetheless. So I think maybe that's the situation, is sometimes maybe she's got some sinus drainage and that just kind of, gags her a little bit. And then we have a throwing up situation where maybe it's not a tummy bug, but she can't help it. So maybe that kind of situation. But anyway, she's just a daycare kid. So she's sick all the time and it's awful and you feel terrible for her and you wish it wasn't that way. But there isn't much I can do about it because we have to work for a living. So with that said, a month ago, I told you guys I went to Creativation and I told you a little bit about my time there. And there were other stories from Creativation that I wanted to share with you. And I never got the opportunity to because my life just kept lifing. It just kept happening. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you, it's a super cute story. So when I went to Creativation, I met maybe a handful of people who watched my channel. And I met lots of other really lovely people who had no idea who I was, which honestly is perfectly fine with me. I met the people from Heffy Doodle, and they were amazing. We had a lot of conversation about the different ways people say things. Going to the bathroom or, it's a loo, it's all kinds of different ways that people pronounce things. And the one young lady, I think her name is Morgan, from Heffy Doodle, she lives in Scotland. She lives in Inverness, which I'm not even saying the way that she says it because she is Scottish. So the way she says it is totally different. And that is where Outlander is based. And so I, of course, have lots of questions because I've read the whole book series twice, except for the last book because I had a baby and now I haven't had any time. I waited for that book for years and years and years. And now she finally released the book and now I don't have any time to read it. It's a sad, sad thing. But anyway, we also watched the show. The show is not for the faint of heart, PPS. Neither is the book, really, honestly. But I super enjoyed it. And so I asked her, is that accurate? And she was like, when it came out, I was like, I lived in Inverness for 3 years. That's not what that looks like at all. Or that's not what that sounds like at all. So she said some parts of it were very accurate, but other parts weren't. And I found that super fascinating. So they were really lovely. And I met some other people for the first time. And some of those people I got to meet again when I went to Create, a couple of weeks after that. I got to see them again. But my favorite story from Creativation about meeting people is, so when you go and you work a trade show, there's usually a handful of you so that you can kind of rotate in and out of the table. So that way you're not standing there because you're there. I mean, it's a long day. We had to be there by 8 and it didn't close down, I think, until 5:36. Maybe one of the days was 5. But anyway, it's just a very long day. So here I'm going to show you my orange combination and I'm going to show you how I colored these 2 little side blooms since you just saw me color the large bloom in the pink. And then for the last one, I'm going to show you how I combine the 2 because you guys know I love for my photos to be matchy-matchy. So I'm going to show you how I combine the 2 to get a flower that is pink on the inside and orange on the outside. But anyway, so there's a couple of us, we take, some breaks, get some lunch, things like that. So I took a break and Jen and Sarah were working the table. And the make and take that we were doing involved stencils. So after each person was done with the stencil, like the stencil had to be cleaned so that the next person could, that sat down to do the make and take could use the stencil, because you do create card kits and stuff so that you can just pass out the papers. We tried to line up the stamps in Misty's so people could just put them in there and then stamp them down. But there's certain things that, like, it's not a fun make and take if they are not doing anything themselves, right? So a portion of what they were doing themselves was, in fact, the stenciling. And so I went out and took a break. I came back and it was freezing in Ohio at that time because it was the first week of April and we can't ever have nice weather. But anyway, so I came back to the table and there was a bunch of people who were working, and I was standing there in the corner trying to kind of jump back in so that Jen or Sarah could take their break. And there was a young woman who was doing the make and take. I saw that she was finished with her stencil, and I kind of reached across and said to her, excuse me, are you finished with this so I can clean your stencil off for you? And she looks at me as if I have terrified her. Like, she looks frightened of me. She's just staring at me, mouth agape. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, did I meet her in another life? Like maybe where I robbed her in an alleyway, because she looks terrified. And so I'm like, I'm sorry. And then she's like, are you Kelly? And I was like, I am indeed. Hi, how are you? And so she goes to, I'm not sure if it was her husband or her boyfriend. I think it was her husband. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is the one that I was telling you about. I watch your videos all the time. And, like she's on my bucket list, you're on my bucket list. And she was so very sweet. Her name was, and I even found her. I had to stalk her down, like not in a creepy way though. But I had to stalk her down. I was trying to find her on Facebook or on Instagram or somewhere, because I didn't want to mispronounce her name. And, so her name, I believe, and if I've ruined it, correct me, do it. Her name is Liette. And so she was super, super sweet. She asked me if we could take a picture. Of course, I said yes. She asked me if I would sign her card. And I was like, homegirl, this is not my rookie card. Like, that this signature isn't worth anything. But she was super excited to have it, so I was happy to sign it for her. And then there was a lady next to her who was like, will you sign mine as well? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm doing autographs now. It's weird because I am just a regular person, but I was happy to kind of make her day. The next morning, I saw her again as we were walking in from the lobby, and she was like, oh my gosh, he took such trash photos. Will you take another picture with me? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So in the lobby, we took another photo, and she was super nice. The other one that I was so touched by, like she literally almost brought me to tears. No, she did. I definitely teared up. There was a lady who stopped by the booth, and she said to me, just very, very sweet, very genuine. Like, I've gone through a really hard time, and your videos really helped me to kind of make it through that. And, something that I looked forward to. And she was so sweet and kind, and it just makes my heart so happy. Because I know that card making isn't for everybody. And I know that, I think everybody should do art, but that not everybody loves it like I do, and that's fine. But it genuinely makes me super grateful for this platform that God has given me in order to share my life and my faith and my stories with people, to let them know that they are not alone, that we're all going through this life together, and we have more in common than you might think. So here, now I've done all of my die cutting, I'm getting my layouts together. This is something that I typically do when I'm making more than one card. I like to kind of have a pause moment where I'm putting everything together so that I'm getting a better visual. And then all of the sentiments came from that same set. So for this one, I used my images as a placeholder. I am going to go in, I'm just going to stamp this directly to my card front using that same black ink. The other two, I did not show you because this video is long. And you've definitely seen me do it on other ones. The other two I heat embossed in white on black cardstock. And then I used their coordinating dies to cut them out. So here, again, this spiral circle is stacked up quite a bit. So I'm really going to adhere my floral to the circle, and then I am going to adhere the circle to my card base. And this is, the flower arrangement is large enough and it covers enough of the circle that everything is still going to be secure without both of them needing to be secured to the card base. So anyway, it was a very positive experience, and I was super grateful for that. With both of them, Creativation and with Create, it's so nice to meet people and to just kind of expand that relationship, because we have this online relationship, right, where I talk to you and then you converse back with me in the comments and I read your stories. And I know, like, let me just apologize for this now. I know I am not as good as I once was about responding to the comments. It's not that I don't read them. It's that I have the best of intentions of replying specifically to each one, and then I just never find the time to do it. For a long time, when I would put Caitlin to bed, while I was sitting in the rocking chair waiting kind of for her to fall asleep, I would go through the comments, and then somehow or another I have gotten away from that because of other things. So I apologize. I do read all of your comments. I don't always get around to responding. I will try to be better about that. But anywho, so it's so nice to meet you guys and say hello in real life. Not just for you there. I mean, like at Create, I took several pictures with different people, and was happy to do so. But because for me, I'm sitting here in my craft room by myself doing this voiceover and hoping that, as a crafter, I can kind of bridge that gap where we all feel like we're kind of in this alone, because we're not. We share this wonderful hobby. So here I did cut out one or two more of the base of the flowers and just adhere those so that I would have a little bit of dimension without any foam tape. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And so that's what you see me doing there. I had already previously kind of trimmed it. That's why there's only so many green, like the green areas. But now I'm going to adhere it and then I will just trim it again. I really liked the way all three of these cards came out. You'll have to tell me which one was your favorite. And if you want to see more of these kind of stretching your supplies, making different card arrangements with the same supplies, or if you want to see supplies stretched in a different way, maybe with different techniques or something, I would be very interested to know your feedback on that. Because ultimately, I want you guys to learn by being here. Not just about me and my life and, my family and all that, but I want you to learn something that you're interested in trying in your own crafting. I want to inspire you and motivate you to get into the craft room, because I know for most of us, this is something that absolutely is a de-stressor, fills our soul with happiness, helps us kind of pour into our own cup for the, upcoming week. So you saw me put some clear shimmer on there. I went into the stamen areas with my white gel pen. This is a number 10, and did some dots. And then these are all three of the cards. So I think they're different enough that they're still interesting, but they will photograph well. And that's really what's important. No, I'm kidding, but it is important to me. So thank you guys so much for your time. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.